In this section, we're going to learn the some rules, okay, to take the derivative. Instead of taking derivative of any function using the definition of a limit, it's there's a shortcut. There's rules to remember. It will help us take derivative of any function a lot faster. So the first rule we're going to learn is the power rule. So if y equal to x to some kind of power, then the derivative, that's another way of writing derivatives. Now you will learn two ways already. You can either write y prime or you can write dy dx. Now dy dx equal to, you move the power to the front of x and subtract 1 degree. So for example 1, y equal to x to the fifth power, then the derivative of y will equal to, move the 5 to the front, 5x to the, and then minus 1 to the fourth power. Same thing with the negative powers, okay? So if y equal to x to the negative 20th, then dy dx will equal to negative 20 x to the negative 21st. Now, we generally don't like a negative exponent, so it's better to put it as a fraction. Now, same thing, we don't always have to use y. Okay, so if we have a function u equal to x to the 1/2 power. Now remember, radical 1/2 power is radical x. Okay, so a lot of time, this is just right now as a practice. A lot of time in your homework questions or exam questions, this is what a question will look like. So you need to remember that. Get used to the idea that our radical x is 1/2 power. Now, once you know it's 1/2 power, we can apply the power rule, move the 1/2 to the front, x to negative 1/2. So when you put this, if you put this, getting rid of this negative power, then you have 1/2 to the radical x. Okay, now if you have a number in front of you have a leading coefficient other than 1, it's the same thing. So if f of x equal to ax to the fourth power, to take the derivative f prime of x, you just simply 4 times 8 is 32, x to the third power using power rule. Okay, same idea here. If you have a negative 1 power, you get y equal to negative 3 x to the negative 1 power. So to take the derivative dy dx, applying the power rule, you take this power right here, negative 1 times negative 3, you have the positive 3, and take negative 1 minus 1, so negative 2. So the final answer is 3 over x squared. Now notice when y equal to 5x as a function, the derivative of that is, well, now remember there's 1 here, x to the first power. So 1 times 5 is 5, and then 1 minus 1 is 0. Now anything to 0 power equal to 1, so the derivative of y equal to 5x simply just 5. Now, a derivative of a constant will equal to 0. Okay, now that's really important. So y equal to 5, y equal to 10, y equal to pi, doesn't matter. As long as if you a function is just a constant, then the derivative is going to be 0. And why? Because think of this phi as phi x to the 0 power, right? Because that's equal to 1 anyways. Now, if you take the derivative of phi x to the 0 power using our power rule, 0 times 5 will give you 0, and x to a negative 1 power, but it doesn't matter. 0 times anything equal to 0. That's why the derivative of any constant is always going to be 0. Now we have a polynomial. If you have a polynomial, u equal to 3x to the fourth plus ax to the 10th. To take the derivative, you can treat it as two separate functions. So you can take the derivative of first term and then take the derivative of second term. Then you will have the same thing. Okay. Once again, we have another polynomial, but this time it's the negative powers. So you take the derivative of this one. So negative 4 times 7 is negative 28. Negative 4 minus 1 is negative 5. Now negative 1/2 times 5 is negative 5 halves. And negative 1/2 minus 1 is negative 3 halves. Now let's rewrite this whole thing without using negative exponents. So here it is. Here's another function here. Okay, if your function is given to you as one number, parenthesis 3x squared plus 5 times parenthesis x minus 1. So you have two terms. Now, for this section, since we only learned power rule, this other rule we can do this later on. Okay, but right now we only have power rule. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna simply just FOIL this out. Once you FOIL it out, you have a polynomial. So we're gonna apply power rule to this polynomial like what we did with all the previous example here. So then all you have to do is 3 times 3 is 9x, and then 3 minus 1 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6, right? X, and then 2 minus 1 is 1. 5x simply become 5, and then remember the constant is 0. So the derivative of this function here will equal to, 9x squared minus 6x plus 5.